Hello and welcome to the Divine Renovation Podcast. My name is Dan O'Rourke, and along with me today is Ron Huntley, Director of Coaching at Divine Renovation. How you doing, buddy?
Great, bud.
It's good to see you. And we have a co-host today, a guest co-host. His name's Eric Myatt. He's a parishioner at St. Benedict Parish, and you do a few other things around the house, I think, right?
A couple other things, yeah. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
Oh, it's good to see you, man. I'm really glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on board.
Awesome. So, Ron, I was speaking to you, I guess it was just a few days back now, and you were sleeping in luxury at the time, in luxury.
There is a padded floor area in the Toronto airport if you miss your connector flight. It's mildly better than sleeping on the hard floor, and so that's where I found myself.
A padded floor, not a padded room.
Returning home from Chicago. It was interesting. It made me really appreciate this little things in life like a bed and a pillow.
So you were on the road. You were on the road for Divine Renovation, right?
I was, yeah.
And so you flew all the way over to Toronto,
yeah.
But that's not where your destination was.
No,
where were you
went
headed?
to Chicago to visit Father Peter and Cardinal Supich and their team, and just to really lean into the partnership that we're developing to help them in their mission. And it was really exciting. It was really fun to be on the ground and to meet these people face to face, although many of them were at the Divine Renovation Conference, but at the same time seeing them in their digs and really getting to meet a lot of the broader team and hear what they're wrestling with and their hearts. It was so much fun.
So were you meeting with their leadership teams or parishioners themselves, or who?
No,
were you
not parishioners, although I hope they're all parishioners somewhere. But no, but they were the diocesan staff in their different capacities, and they're doing a Renew My Church campaign under the leadership and vision of Cardinal Supich, and it's incredible how many people they have involved, the alignment of the vision. Not easy, though. Like, that's one thing at the diocesan level. Then it's another thing how you experience it as a priest and a pastor, and then how you experience it as a layperson, as part of a community. It's challenging. But the love they have for the church, the love they have for the mission of the church and the people in the church and their pastors is beautiful. It was really fun. Yeah, it was great to meet them. And
So they're one of many, I think, dioceses around the world that are actually trying to transform a diocese. I mean, we've worked with a lot of parishes, and we've had such an amazing experience with parishes. But Chicago was the first diocese that we really got into a deep conversation about what it would be like to work with them as a whole diocese. But let me ask you a question, Ron. What kind of impact do you think this would have if as they go down this path? What kind of impact do you think it might have in that diocese?
Well, it's going to be interesting because, to your point, a lot of dioceses are wrestling with this issue, mostly because they have to restructure. Right? They have far more infrastructure than they have capacity and resources. And so it makes sense to restructure. Not everybody's also taking a focus on building up the church in terms of evangelization, discipleship, leadership, and they are. And so they have a 5-step process, and we just get involved in the 5th step. So really, them and their team are doing all the heavy lifting, and it's amazing what they're doing. It's a lot of intelligent people there just laying it on the line to really make a difference. And so I think there are a lot of different ways that people are going about it. The way they're going about it, I find, is really exciting, which is great for us because we don't have the expertise to do that whole thing, restructure in an entire diocese. Yeah. But so I don't know, I just love the way they're doing it. I love where they got us involved and their hopes. We talk the same language, we have the same passion and the same desire and hope for the church. And so if they do this well, and one of the things that is one of their greatest blessings is their diversity. They have so many different pockets of ethnic groups and people, and so that also creates a lot of different challenges and struggles. What's fun with us in the network, in the Divine Renovation Network, is we've been coaching into all kinds of different churches all over the world that also have different pockets of this. So we're going to be able to bring a lot of expertise to the table, which will be fun. But if they get this right, like if we're able to do what they hope to do, and we're just going to help them do what they hope to do, this is their plan, we're just coming alongside to help. But if we're able to help them do what they're setting out to do, I think I don't want to overstate it, but I think it could really help the world, because the church we know is hemorrhaging worldwide in many ways. Yeah. And there's so many different languages spoken in this diocese that if we coach into these churches at the scale that they're asking us to do, and they start to renovate their own churches and start to go on mission and see change and start hitting the goals they hope to hit, well, then how many coaches are going to come out of that speak different languages? And once that happens, how many other countries can we help who are also struggling with a lot of the same things? We're going to learn even more intensely about the different cultures and what obstacles they come up against in terms of their cultural Catholicism, and how we can help resolve some of those issues all over the world. So it really does have the capacity to impact far greater than just Chicago. And if you think about it, you know, all these other dioceses that are doing their things too, and they're doing so many dioceses. You've got great people with great intent doing great work. But many of them are doing different things, are attacking it differently, which is nothing wrong with that. It's innovation. They're doing their best. We're going to see some practices that maybe have better outcomes. And once we start to understand those and see the fruit of those, maybe we can learn from one another. And that's my hope.
So I know that you guys coach parishes, but the diocese is new to me. How do you find the conversation similar, but maybe the different elements of that conversation when you're speaking to parishes, but here you spoke to folks from the diocese? How does that dynamic differ?
Do you know what? To be honest with you, I don't find it does. and maybe I'll learn that it does, but to me it doesn't. And a part of it's because I believe so much in people. If you have the right intent, if you have a relationship with Christ, you love Jesus, you love his church, and you love its mission, then we're all on the same page. And if we can continue to bring each other to that place and then create amazing teams and formulate a structure where we can support people so that they can thrive in what they do, and we can bring alignment and clarity to what they're responsible for, and when we can define what success looks like and help them lean into the things that work and make a difference, we can change the world. And that doesn't matter if you're a parish or you're a diocese, and the same principles apply. And also, I would say, what culture do we want to create? Can we be intentional about creating our culture and not just focus on what we do or what has to get done? Because if we focus on the tasks, we lose focus on the people. And when we lose focus on the people, that's a recipe for toxicity. And when you have toxic cultures, which most of them are, what ends up happening is it negatively impacts the creativity, the innovation, and the output that you can get in teams. And so that's the same whether you're in the pharmaceutical industry, whether you're with CCO, whether you're in a parish, or whether you're in a diocese. We can get that right, and we can help people build dynamic teams of trust. We can change the world.
So on this trip, like, what did you find yourself communicating, your key messages pushing against? Because, like, 15 years ago, evangelization was not talked about in the way that it's talked about now. Missionary identity, who we are. So what kind of things are you seeing as sort of the next step in these kind of conversations that you would have had in Chicago, but with the parishes as well? Because people kind of take for granted now, like, evangelization, but like this podcast, bringing a parish from maintenance to mission. That's a new kind of dynamic in the past few years. So how's the conversation unfolding, I guess, in all the conversations you're having with these different people?
Well, in Chicago, they're driving the process. We're not coming to them saying, "Hey, let's we really got to change the way things are happening." No, it's the opposite. They've already done all the hard work. Their passion is so high, their commitment is so high, their goals are so high, and so. I heard a person say, I think it was Bill Scollard, who works with St. Benedict Parish, tells a story of the Buffalo Bills coach one time being interviewed, knowing full well that he has a team that has a reputation for being highly motivated. And so the interviewer asked him, "Hey, coach, what do you do to keep your team and your coaches motivated?" And he said, "Nothing. I hire motivated people." Wow. And, going to Chicago, I just met so many unbelievably cool people that were highly motivated, focused, intelligent, faithful, that, the hard work's already done.
Wow. I think the Holy Spirit's aligning so many things in Chicago. And so I don't want to overstate, I don't want to put too much pressure on them, because I imagine some of them are watching. But we expect great things from Chicago. But what I love about what you said earlier was around the multicultural aspect. And I can remember, Ron, if you think back, I guess almost a year, not quite a year ago, we had one of our close friends and advisors flying to town, and he was here, and he gave us a lot of really good advice. And among the things things he told us. It's like, guys, you guys should really just focus on English-speaking countries, right? Because you don't have the capacity to deal with countries that speak a different language. And I can remember us all sitting around the table, that's a great, we should do that.
Not all of us.
And
Father James was not buying that for a minute.
James has got the world in mind.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, God bless Father James, because I think the Holy Spirit put it in his heart and wouldn't let him let go. And I look at what we're seeing now in all sorts of different countries. I mean, I think of the Divine Renovation in 2018 conference, right? I mean, we had 12 countries here in Halifax for that conference, 42 countries joining us online. I mean, that's a lot of different diversity all at play, and we can't meet that demand. It's impossible. But I think, things like Chicago, which is a diverse community, a diverse diocese, begins to help give us some of those what word am I looking for here? It's that notion that we're setting like camps of pockets of possibility that we could find in a diocese like Chicago, which God's already put so many of the right pieces together for.
Well, and they're not the only ones, to be honest. I mean, our friends that are listening in Scotland who are in the network, half their church, maybe 60% are Polish. Yeah. How many churches in the U.S. where half their congregation is Hispanic? And so, there are friends in London, East London, who have a high African population. And so we are already coaching into a lot of different demographics, which makes it really fun. So that's why I don't find it intimidating to go in this direction. But again, and one of my most exciting things is Father Tiago in Portugal is in the network now. We're coaching into a Portuguese country because we raised up a coach in Australia who speaks Portuguese as well as English. And so, and then we have Pablo, one of our coaches in Mexico City, who speaks Spanish and English. And so,
oh my goodness, you guys, Scotland.
And our friends in Germany, Father Hesse and his team there, don't think they're not going to make something amazing happen because, I love Father James's vision was never small, and he resists anyone's attempt to make it smaller it's because he's being compelled by the Spirit to help people. That's the bottom line. Yeah. We're not trying to build an empire. We're trying to bless people, and people of all different shapes, sizes, demographics, ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic status are seeking an experience of being Catholic that's absolutely transformative. And we all know in our gut that that's what we long for.
Yeah. You guys, Scotland, Germany, Mexico City. Where else did you say, Ron? Australia. Who's listening to this right now? You guys didn't tell me it was all. You didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, we got so caught up in that conversation. Who's this Eric guy? And how did he get on set today? Is really the question. So, who listens to this podcast? A lot of people from a lot of different walks of life.
My mom's going to listen to this one. It's going to
be audience just tripled in size.
Yeah, right.
Usually we have like half of one person. No, it's great. But Eric, why don't we get a sense a little bit better of who you are for people who are listening and joining us. Who are you?
My name's Eric. That's it. Whatever
all you need to know.
That's right.
So one of the things I think you're doing, so you're a parishioner at St. Benedict Parish, and one of the things I know you're doing right now that's really cool is you are the leader of the newest, the shiniest, the most, that new car smell Connect group at St. Benedict Parish, right?
Yeah, we started that a couple of weeks back. We just had our second get together on Sunday, and I mean, I love it. It's so good, a chance for some of the folks who have gone through Alpha to experience an ongoing sense of community, fellowship. We share a meal together. We have someone share a talk from the Connect group, so an outside person doesn't come in. It's actually from our Connect group that this is happening. And then we have a discussion about it, similar to the format around Alpha. And we have some time of prayer with music at the end, and we pray for each other. We pray for our needs, the needs of the folks in our Connect group.
So let me ask you this. How was your Connect group? How was it assembled?
So we were part of a Connect group for about 2 years. We were participants in a Connect group, and we loved it. We looked forward to it every couple of weeks. And then we joined a discipleship group with another couple from our Connect group who happened to be leading the Connect group that we were a part of. So we grew in relationship with this
What's
couple.
a discipleship group as it relates to a Connect group?
Yeah, so a discipleship group is a smaller group typically of parishioners or of people in your Connect group, a subset, but sometimes from people outside. And it's content-based. So it's a short-term commitment. It has a start date, an end date, and
4 to 10 people.
Yeah, 4 to 10 people, and you have content that's in there. So we start with a program called the Spiritual Gifts Inventory, which was a wonderful product of the St. Catherine of Siena Institute in the U.S., and we moved on to our Lenten series that the parish took on. It was awesome. But in the midst of all that, we grew, us 2 couples, myself, my wife, Angie, and this other couple. And we thought, what's kind of next for us? Around the same time, there was a big need for connect groups at the parish. And so we were asked to take on leadership of this new family-friendly connect group. So away we went.
Love it. Yeah. Family-friendly means what?
So yeah, this particular connect group, we've got a ton of kids. I think we had like 24 kids at this connect group. There was about around 20 people at our last connect group, adults, and then however many kids are kicking around. I lose count of those things.
Kick them out in the backyard to play and have fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
We have 4 ourselves, and they look forward to connect group as well. They have friends in their connect group. They join us for the meal. They have a video or something, but they have a blast, and we absolutely destroy someone's house. Just kidding. No,
just kidding is right, because nobody will do it.
No one will do it, exactly. No, just kidding. It's a great time. They love it.
Right.
It's awesome, yeah.
So this week on, I guess it was earlier in the week, I went to one of our parishioners' houses because we were pulling together all of the volunteer team leads from the DR18 conference for a debrief meeting.
Nice.
And so so I was over at her house, and I was looking at her living room, and there was a bunch of chairs there, and I said, Colleen, this might not be enough chairs. She's like, they won't all show up, right? And sure enough, all 18 DR18 team leads showed up. So you can imagine how many volunteers, because DR18 was we had so many volunteers from the parish. It was over 280 people put on or were part of volunteering to make that conference happen. And so we had this this debrief, and Elizabeth from our team, she drove us through a bunch of really pointed questions what did and then the other thing she did, and this is what was so cool, Ron. We had done feedback forms for all of our volunteers. And so all 280. And so she had this document in front of her, and it was a series of questions and categories, right? And Ron, I've heard you say this before, and but this, so what you've said in the past is that when we did DR16 2 years ago, it really brought us all together, united us as a community in a new and amazing way. That when everyone from all these different ministries is all sort of united under one task, it creates this amazing sense of unity. And so we had these volunteer forms, so these feedback forms from 280 people. I don't know how many people actually submitted, but lots of them. Yeah. And so Elizabeth's going through it. Anyway, she was flipping through page after page, and it was just rows of numbers of what people checked, 1 to 10, 1 to 10, 1 to 10. Anyways, she got all the way to page 3 before she found the first number that wasn't a 10. It was page after page, 10 out of 10 parishioners saying this was just such an amazing experience, that we loved it, that it was such a great, that they felt so much, they felt appreciated. Anyways, it was just so cool to hear how our community sort of was not just united, but felt so empowered by the opportunity to host people from around the world here, and to go through page after page of 10 out of 10s. It was humbling in a lot of ways, but it really drove home that point that I've heard you make in the past, is that when we're united in a mission like that, wow, it can be powerful.
Well, sometimes we need a rally cry, and the parishes that are listening to this, sometimes we just get in a routine of doing church. And doing church isn't enough. And every now and again, we need a great big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG. And because when we do, it unites us together. And I hope that when we create those goals and opportunities, we make them really big and scary. Because when we do, it engages people's imaginations and hearts. Nobody's drawn to a small vision. Yep. Nobody is drawn to a small vision. And so to be able to do this, people are taking time off work and everything else, taking vacation time to serve and minister to other people. And it's a uniting force. And force for what? Force for Jesus. We're building the kingdom of God. There's nothing more exciting in life. I don't care what you do, how much money you make, and how happy your life is. There's nothing that will bring more happiness and joy to your life than helping use your gifts to build up the kingdom of God. It's true.
And one of the things Carrie Newhoff was saying was that we lower the bar almost too much sometimes for our volunteers. as a church, that we don't give them enough of a challenge. And so how can you possibly attract high caliber people if you're not giving them a real challenge? If you've lowered the bar so that it's so simple for them to be part, then you're not actually giving them space to inhabit that role and to be the right kind of leader in your church.
It's true. That's what drove me to do Alpha. Because I was thinking, I want to serve my church. And it's like, great, you can read. It's like, well, okay, but so can 1,000 other people. Well, you can distribute communion. Well, I love Holy Communion, but so can 1,000 other people. Like, this doesn't do anything to tax my gifts and grow me as a person. And, are we using people to build up our church? Or as Rick Warren says, are we using our church to build up people? And if we're going to build people up, we need to stretch and challenge people. And so we need activities, goals, missions, visions that are wildly cool, not just enough to get through our liturgy and put people through Sunday school. Man, that's too small a goal.
So today's the last day of school for my kids. So my wife's actually, I bet you she's picking them up roughly right about now. It's
in the pouring rain.
In the pouring rain here in Halifax. But what the last day of school reminds me of is the fact that we're about to hit summer. And so we do a monthly webinar with parishes in our Divine Renovation coaching network, right? So the network gets to be part. And so that earlier this week, Father James and Rob McDowell did a webinar, and it was all on using your summer, maximizing your summer. And so anyways, I'm feeling summer now because like here in Canada, we're about to hit summer. And
in Nova Scotia, we get 3 weeks of it.
We get 3 weeks of it.
I'm hoping for a long weekend of heat.
And it's one of those times, though, where I think we have to recharge as people in ministry roles. It's an opportunity. Summer's an opportunity to recharge. So I want to know, guys, what are you doing to recharge this summer?
Yeah, well, I get to take in a little bit of sailing. I'm a sailor. My wife and I get to go race on Wednesday nights at a nearby yacht club here. We got into it actually through Father Rob Arsenault, who was a companion of the cross, the order of the pastor of St. Benedict Parish, Father Simon. And it is such a blast. We love it. It's such a great way to rest and relax.
I'll tell you, there's nothing relaxing about the starting line in a race. It is like it's like a bully's intense field day. It's scary. Like, it is horrifying.
So fun. Ministry-wise, the pace changes a little bit. We do campus ministry. CCO is called Catholic Christian Outreach. We're a national Canadian university student movement. And we work with students on campus in evangelization. And we also build them up to be leaders in the renewal of the world. Speaking of audacious goals, we aim for the world.
There's lots of people I coach into in different parts of the world are very familiar with CCO. So you guys have been in different parts of the world. You're impacting different parts of the world.
It's a compelling vision. I mean, especially in the hearts of young people who are idealistic. They want to go after the big time, And so to cast a compelling vision for them is something that they want to be a part of and get into. So the summer obviously winds down on campus, and our missionaries with CCO, there's about 80 or 85 full-time lay missionaries that work with the movement. And we're all responsible for raising the money necessary to fund our salaries and our ministry expenses. So the summer is a big time of focus on fundraising. So it's a change of pace, a little different from the rhythms of campus, but it's fulfilling and hard work for many of our staff doing that.
Well, sometimes a change is as good as a rest.
Yep.
When you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you could take a vacation, and that's great. We need them. But also sometimes switching our focus gives us a rest as well. And I think that what Rob and Father James talked about in the session last week was the types of things that we do as parishes to evaluate how the year has gone, set goals for the year ahead, and then to plan that out, which, again, just changing gears can sometimes feel like a rest. I know myself, I'm going to be taking some Fridays off. I hope to get out golfing with my uncles and my son, so that will be a lot of fun. And, that'll be great. I expect to take a week, too, to head up to Quebec City to watch my son's training camp this year, so that'll be fun. Patrick was going to be his head coach this year and general manager.
That means a lot to all the Canadians.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody else,
everyone in Canada is like, really? Wow. Everyone else is like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, they're too busy watching the World Cup, right? So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to. I'm taking a 6-week respite from coaching because there are other things in the ministry that I need to focus on to build up. One of them is the fact that, right now we have 7 coaches in the network, and I really believe that we're going to need about 75 in the next 3 years to coach probably upwards of 225 churches. And so I realize as we're growing, I can get so busy doing ministry that I don't become intentional about what I want to create. Because if the team's going to grow, I want to take some time this summer and I want to evaluate what kind of a culture do I want for these people? What do I want them to experience as a coach in the network? And to be honest with you, I want this to be the highlight of their working career. I want them to look at being a coach as the funnest, most challenging, engaging, exciting thing they've ever done, that's made the biggest difference in anything they've ever done in their life. That's the goal I want to create for the people who coach in the network. And so that doesn't happen by mistake. And so I'm going to take some time this summer with the team that is on the ground here, and we're going to start thinking about that and making some concrete plans and goals to make sure that that's what people's experience is if they're working with us in the network as a coach. And so I'm excited.
So you have 7 coaches, Ron. What's your pipeline for coaches? I mean, I'm familiar with the pipeline at the parish, the leadership pipeline, our evangelization that we do there. How do you raise up coaches, and you talk about your hope to have more in the future? How does that look like?
It's a lot like Alpha, really. A lot of the skills I've learned by doing Alpha well are the same skills that I use in raising up coaches in the network, because all of our coaches, one of the things that's most important to us is everything we do is from the ground up. It's from the grassroots. This isn't a top-down movement. It's a bottom-up. And so it's the people in the network that we're coaching. As I'm coaching them, I'm looking for, are they faithful, available, contagious, and teachable? Are they on fire for what we're doing? Do they have a heart for it? Do they have the skill set? Do they have the emotional intelligence? Do they ask good questions? Do they listen well? And as I see those skill sets in people, I make a mental note, often talk about it to the leadership team, and start to flag people as possibles, because we want people to be in the network for at least a year before we call them into this ministry. And that's only too if their church begins to turn around. So if they begin to experience the benefits
if they're
of
being
going
fruitful.
from if they're being fruitful.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, then they're not ready yet, because I need people who are leaders. I need people who are leading change. And so we look for that in people that we're coaching, and then we just have that I see in you conversation. Because if I really do see that in people, I let them know. Then they would have to ask their pastor. Some of the new coaches coming into the network are pastors, but most are lay people that have important roles in the church and are a big part of the change in their churches. And so, they have to get the approval of their pastor, because I don't want to do that without
their pastor says, don't take my best people.
And here's the nice thing, we're not taking anybody, because
them,
they're actually stay doing exactly what they're doing, and they just take on, a church or two.
Wow.
And so what that ends up doing in terms of the benefit to the people, the coaches, there's nothing like coaching to reinforce your values and your principles that you speak, which helps you to evaluate your own behavior when you're executing ministry and leading. And so what's happening to them is they're learning so much about themselves as they coach, and it helps them to double down on the things that get results. And so they become even bigger asset to their pastor and their leadership team and their ministry. And so it's not taking anybody at all. It's actually enhancing those people, growing those people as they share and grow them. We're constantly trying to grow people.
That's the crux, I think, of the DNA of geez, I was going to say the DNA of DRM. That's
so many acronyms around here.
But it is the DNA of the Divine Renovation Ministry, right? It's is to identify, raise up leaders everywhere we possibly can. And I think it's the only way, though, that we can ever hope to have the kind of impact that we think that the Holy Spirit wants us to have. We have to raise up and help raise up and identify leaders around the world, give them platform, amplify what they're already doing, because they're doing amazing things.
Yeah, it's so true. One of my favorite stories of the DR18 conference was Katie K. Shuttleworth being interviewed as part of the keynote, because I know that speaking in public like that is not one of her favorite things to do. And she's not alone, let's face it. I mean, a lot of people are not comfortable speaking in front of large groups. And I know it was not something that she was looking forward to, but she was so gracious, so impactful, so good, and I loved that she did it despite probably wishing someone else did. And I thought it was great that the global leader of Alpha in a Catholic context, we're even able to help her step out of her comfort zone.
Put her up on stage.
So Kitty, if you're listening, we think you're great. You did an amazing job.
Yeah, the 700 people there, the 13,000 people online loved what you said.
Right? I just think it's amazing because we really do. And that's the thing, even in the network, by bringing Eric on as a co-host. Well, have you ever co-hosted a video podcast before?
Can't say I have, no.
Right?
No.
And so we're constantly looking for people of capacity like Eric and giving them opportunities to stretch and grow and learn new skills. And that's how we run our parish. That's how we run our ministry. And that's how we want to...
All right, let's break it there because I think we're going to bring on our next leader. We've asked Phil Marmen to join us today. So we're going to be right back with Phil.
Have you ever read books or listened to talks on parish renewal and leadership and thought, that's good for them, but how would that ever happen in my parish? And do these people even know what it's like to be in a parish? How do you bridge the gap between the theory and real life parish? The Divine Renovation Association exists for all those reasons. It's created for and by people who have lived it and are living it right now in real life parishes. I believe that every parish has the potential to impact the world around it. I believe that every leader has the capacity to be a better leader. I believe that every parish can be so much better and more exciting than it currently is. And we want to help with that, to help you and your team to move your parish from maintenance to mission.
Welcome back to the Divine Renovation podcast. We've got with us Phil Marmen. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. So, Phil, you're what is your job title at St. Benedict Parish?
I'm the music ministry leader. That's kind of like an overarching music ministry. So not just the specific 9 a.m., but I kind of oversee all the music
all the music that happens in that building.
Yes.
You oversee.
Yes, pretty much.
Well, I think it's a little bigger than that too, isn't it? Because music's not just what we do on Sundays, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. We haven't quite figured out how to integrate the Alpha and Connect groups, discipleship group maybe, that kind of thing. Yeah, we haven't quite figured that piece out yet. I'm only 15 hours a week, so it's we want to keep it reasonable to do what I'm doing well rather than overload me.
Yeah.
But we're talking through those points.
Right. Well, Phil, before we talk about the music ministry itself and your various roles at the parish, why don't you give us a sense of how you got connected to St. Benedict Parish? Where's the genesis of your relationship with that place?
Sure. So I moved to Halifax in 2012. Not interested in joining ministry. I just kind of wanted to be in a parish and just kind of be in the back and not really...
Why is that?
Involved. I just come off of a few years of net ministry, so 2 years of pretty full-on ministry.
So why don't you describe what net is? You can't just say net.
Sure. So net teams or net ministries of Canada, what we do or what they do is kind of a similar idea to CCO in the sense that you get about 60 young adults, train them up, and then send them out in teams. And what they do is they can either be stationed in parishes, and they'll help kind of start or grow ministry in that parish, or they can be traveling teams where they'll go around to schools and churches and put on like day retreats or
for
weekend
youth,
retreats.
Right?
For youth, yeah, for young adults,
sometimes families,
children, yeah,
right,
yeah.
So you were net, you were doing net, and then you were happy to sit in the back pew of the parish.
Yeah. So I mean, to be fair, I had a few years. It was about 2 years after net that I moved to Halifax, but I was still kind of weary, we'll say. Anyway, the guys that I was living with, one of them was playing drums in the band at St. Benedict, and they needed a guitarist. And so he said, "You know what, Phil? Are you interested in coming to play guitar in the band?" And as much as I didn't really want to get involved in music ministry, I felt that God was asking me to do this. And so I said, sure. And then that's when I started coming to St. Benedict and met my wife.
What year? What year was that? Just
2012, in the fall of 2012.
Yeah. Okay.
6 years ago.
It's been a while.
And the very first day you met your wife?
No, not the very first day.
Some pretty girls there.
You wouldn't believe that back pew.
That's funny.
Were you always into music? Like you said, you kind of came to St. Benedict and you were going to play guitar. Have you always been sort of musically inclined? Did you learn on net, or what's your background musically?
Well, so my music involvement in my life started when I was 5. I started playing violin and cello from a young age, so classical music training there. And by the time I was 15, I was too cool to do that stuff, so probably one of the most regrettable decisions of my life. But and then I picked up the guitar when I graduated high school, and so I kind of played from that point on. And a lot of my ministry formation, I guess, like how to play guitar in a ministry setting and how to lead in that setting, kind of came from my time with NET, actually. Cool. So I learned a lot there. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So let me ask you a couple questions about your experience at NET, because we've actually had NET people at our parish before. Yeah. And so just like with the CCO, there's a certain culture, I guess, that NET would instill in their young people that they work with. How did you find that transition from the NET culture into a parish?
That's a good question. My transition kind of happened when I was in St. John, actually, when I was still living in New Brunswick. And a big piece for me was that I had community. Because when you're coming out in St. John, when you're coming off of NET, like your experience in that is very intense community. You know, you're with these same 5 to 8 people or whatever it is for 8 months. And you're always calling each other to be a better person, to be holy. And there's constant prayer, there's constant, it's just, you're being built up by these people, and you come out of that and it can feel like a void, right? It can be really difficult. So I had community coming out of it, and there was a music ministry that I was involved in St. John as well. So there was kind of like a little soft landing there, I guess. Right. But in my experience, you can come out of NET being either wiped and not interested in ministry at all, or completely on fire, and that's all you want to do. Those are kind of, I'm sure there are in-betweens, but those are kind of the extremes that I've run into, yeah.
Right. So in terms of your role then at St. Benedict Parish, you're in charge of all the music that happens, but I see you the most. My encounter with you the most is actually at 9 a.m. because you're part of the 9 a.m. band, right? Yes. So why don't you talk just a little bit about it? Give us a sense of what happens at 9 a.m. at Mass at St. Benedict for those who've never been.
Sure. Well, we have a band that provides the music ministry for that point. So we've got it's guitar and keyboard led, basically acoustic guitar and keyboard. We'll kind of balance between those two, and then we have a bass, electric bass, and electric guitar and a drum kit, and that's kind of the music setup that we have. I'm not really sure what else to say about that.
Well, tell us a bit about the style of music and the way that worship happens at the 9 a.m.
What are your goals as a music ministry in terms of leading worship?
Right. So one of the big things that we shoot for is congregational participation. We see that kind of language in some of the Vatican documents, active participation, conscious active participation. So that's one of the things that we really shoot for. We want people to be singing. We want people to be, beyond singing, praying the music. And so some of the ways that we try to achieve that is by, using songs fairly consistently so they're known to the congregation. And if we're bringing in new songs, we try to teach them, that sort of thing. We want to, our number one goal is to help people pray, right? So that's the main thing, and keeping that as our priority is very important to us. So
I think that's my experience of what's happened at that service too. And I think of, so that's the service I would normally attend with my family. I say with my family, my wife's in ministry. She's downstairs working, but I'm upstairs. I'm upstairs celebrating Mass. Mass. My Connect group family. But what I love about that service, my experience of it anyway, is that everyone around me is just belting out those songs, right?
I know.
We just belt them out.
Yeah. It's so fun. And then, too, because of the culture that we've been able to foster over the last 7 or 8 years, with Alpha particularly helping people to surrender to Jesus and to be open to the Spirit, it's not uncommon for some people to lift their hands in praise and adoration of God while they're singing. Not everybody does, but we're not trying to get everybody to do anything. We just want to give people the freedom to worship. And I find you guys do such a good job of creating that space that I can just feel like I can be myself before the Lord.
It's so compelling, like the way that you guys lead, I'm not sure how we can know this, but like you're praying those songs. We're all beneficiaries of your leadership in that ministry, and boy, just the environment that you help create that helps elevate our experience of Mass, and the beauty of the Eucharist and the reception of the Eucharist. Like you're building us to do all those things better. So how's your experience when you're leading? Like, are you kind of caught up in sort of the technical aspects of it? Because it's not a small job to lead a band.
No, it's true.
And to
be responsible for that impact.
And to do it well and to remove distractions and things. So what's going on in your mind during Mass? Like, are you able to pray, or do you find it super distracting to have to lead all these people?
Right. I would certainly say that one of the things that we've prioritized is we want to be worship leaders, and by that I mean we lead by worshiping ourselves, right? So it's not we're trying to not be outside of the whole experience. We're at the front. Sure, we're at the front of it. People are kind of following our lead, but that's been a huge thing for us. That said, it's easy to be distracted by the little things that happen. You know, guitar goes out of tune, battery dies in a DI or an amplifier, whatever it is.
Right.
Things happen.
That's life.
Yeah, there's always a certain element of you kind of have to be backed up from it a little bit just to kind of stay on top of things. But we do try to be as engaged in the Mass as possible so that people see that and they say, oh, okay, well, this is something that I should be doing too.
Well, you make it look easy, but I know that you guys put a ton of work into it. Can you share about kind of your commitment outside of, the 9 a.m. Mass? There's a lot goes into what you guys are doing.
Right. Well, I mean, there's rehearsal, which is typically we rehearse on Tuesday evenings. And it's usually we shoot for an hour and a half rehearsal. That kind of includes setup, but it often goes 2 hours. And so that's rehearsing songs that we know already. So like trying to polish those up and trying to really
get into better.
Yeah. And we want to get into a space where we're not concerned about how we're playing it. We want to know the songs so well that we can just have the freedom to pray it, and lead people in that.
Like anything else
right?
that you're great at, people that are great at stuff usually work really hard at stuff before you see them, which is so cool. But one of the other things that you guys are involved with helping us lead is the praise and worship nights that we do. I don't know, is that quarterly kind of that we do that, or every couple of months?
We're talking about doing them more frequently, but presently it's about 4 per ministry season, so every couple months or so.
So we spend an extended period of time just, again, leaning into that culture of praise and worship. But it's interesting because this past week when I'm coaching, most of the churches in the network had an opportunity to attend the conference, and I was asking people what were some of the highlights, and so many people said, first of all, the volunteers always steal the show, just for the record. There's no beating the impact our volunteers have on the world, right? Like truly, that was everyone's number one experience was the hospitality and just the beauty of our volunteers. But one of the other common things that came up was music. And what's neat is it came up in 2 ways. Many people said, I've never had an opportunity to pray like that. And they felt so caught up in the praise. And a lot of them are aspiring to bring that type of music into their experience of liturgy, but also the culture of their church, because it's more than just liturgy. It's this type of music gets played in other parts of people's experience of prayer at our church. But the other thing, and I thought this was equally valid, some people said, I didn't like it. That's not their experience of being Catholic. And they found it distracting to enter into prayer. And I thought, I can relate to that because, when people are expressive with their prayer and, hands are up or things like that, it's so not my experience of Sunday Mass that it's so foreign I find it distracting. But personally, I remember experiencing that the first time. I went to run for my life. I knew there was something authentic there. I knew there was beauty there, but it was so foreign to my experience of going to church on Sunday, I wanted to run for my life. It was only several years later that I had I don't know what it was, but the willingness, I guess, to submit myself to that environment. But honestly, it led me to a place of surrender. And I find that style of music, I listen to Gregorian chant when I pray in the morning, so I love all kinds of different styles of music. I listen to Bach while I'm working because it's no lyrics, and I love the sounds. And so I'm very eclectic in my music style, but I find when it comes to really surrendering my life to Christ, I can relate to the words, I can sing along, I can enter in, and it just takes me to a place where I can be present. And a lot of people spoke to that from the conference, and so, you know, it's more than just the liturgy, isn't it?
Yeah, and on the note of the praise and worship nights, so where that came from is this is a few years ago that we started it, but we had a sense that maybe people were enjoying the music, but not necessarily praying the music. And so we kind of recognize that praying with music isn't necessarily a natural thing for a lot of people. They might not know how to do it. And so that was the idea behind the praise and worship nights, is we wanted to give people kind of a forum or a venue where we can be intentional about teaching them to pray with it. Right? And so we
not assuming.
Exactly. And there's so much more freedom outside of the context of the liturgy to say, this is what this is about, and then we can just do it for a long time, and people can get used to it, right? So that's kind of...
And not to mention how much fun it is for you guys to just rip it up. Like the volume comes up, Carlos just pulls out every pedal he has and goes crazy, and you know, you guys, it's a fun opportunity to be expressive and creative, isn't it?
It is.
And you need to have fun in ministry. You want to use your gifts in a way that you're growing and being stretched, and it gives you guys, like you say, a venue to do that.
So the 9 a.m. service is the one I go to, so it's the one I'm always most comfortable talking about because I go there every week. But there's a totally different music style happening at the next service. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the 11:15 Mass, we have kind of a more traditional choir. They'll sing some, and by traditional I don't mean like 1980s, 1960s traditional. I mean, like, this stuff has been in the church for hundreds of years.
You got a problem with the 80s?
Good hair. For a different podcast. But and kind of the idea there is recognizing what you were saying, Ron, that for some people they just don't connect with contemporary music, and some people just don't pray well with that, and some people pray really well with this more traditional stuff, the Gregorian stuff and the polyphonic stuff, and so we offer that.
What does that word mean?
Wow. Polyphony, poly, many, and phony, voices, so many voices. So it technically it means the people in the choir are singing kind of different things. It's kind of layered, really neat stuff.
Nice.
Really challenging, and often stuff that you don't necessarily participate in.
Right.
And so that's kind of where the challenge comes in for using it at Mass. But it was certainly written for the Mass, and so there's a balance to be struck there.
Right. Well, probably at a time when it was still in Latin, when people didn't really right? So there was a disconnect anyway in terms of how Mass was celebrated.
Yeah. But we can experience God through beauty, right? And certainly this traditional music can reach different depths of beauty than we can with contemporary music, right? It's a different level.
Different expression.
Exactly. So it's just, it's good to be able to offer that, and we're blessed to have really great people in place for that.
Do you ever get to participate in the 11:15 choir?
Funny story.
I love funny stories.
I typically don't, because if I did, that would just make for a very long Sunday morning for me, because we get there at 7:30 to prep for the 9. So usually, no. I have sung in choirs before, and I love singing in choirs, and I would love to sing in that choir. Usually I don't. But DR, on Tuesday, DR 18, they were short a tenor. And so that morning, Peter, the choir director, said, "Phil, can you sing with us?" And I said,
I had no idea.
Give me the music. This is like an or so before, so I kind of took a look at it, and I did okay. There was another tenor there, so I kind of...
You're able to lean on him.
Exactly. But
I had no idea.
What's so cool about Peter too? Like, he's an award-winning composer.
Yeah.
Like he has chops. Like he
does.
really does.
Yeah.
Like, and I know it's so beautiful that, and I think this is your influence too. Just really building relationships with all the different music ministries, including Kim at the 6 p.m. And what's so fun is they just completed Alpha, and I heard they really enjoyed that. So they're in the game plan with us, and it's just so much fun when we're in community, and because you can make music just your own thing and kind of make that a silo, and we don't want silos at St. Benedict, do we?
Yeah, no, and that's been a huge part of my role, is just kind of connecting with came in with Peter and Lindsay, who coordinates the 4 o'clock Mass. It's just been connecting with them and supporting them, right?
Beautiful.
And that's been a huge thing. It's been kind of game changing for them and for the ministry in general. So it's just been overall really great.
Isn't that cool?
So Phil, we've talked a little bit about the music. Help me understand though, because I think you do more than music in terms of the way you've approached the ministry. So how do you inject faith into what you're doing? What's the role of faith in the actual people who are part of the music ministry?
Right. That's a good question. It's something that we can certainly do better, but we've tried, and it is something that actually it's interesting. We think we come up with these ideas on our own, but they're in the Vatican documents that were written 50 years ago or whatever it is, where we should be supporting our ministry members in faith formation. And so one of the things that we did just last fall is we took 6 weeks off of rehearsing on Tuesday evenings. And instead of doing that, we brought everyone together and we did a faith study, actually a CCO faith study, awesome. Just to kind of tap into that side of our faith, because when we come together on Tuesdays, we practice, we pray a little bit, and then we go, and that's it. And then Sundays, it's just crazy. So we don't really have that opportunity to connect even socially, really, or talk about faith-related things. And so that's something that we're really interested in doing again in some form or fashion, and it's been really good.
Yeah, because you can have massively talented musicians, but if they're not fed, if they're not continuing to grow in their faith, if they're not in the game plan or getting formation, then that's a lost opportunity to help the people that are actually ministering to people, supposed to be leading people in prayer, to be growing in that. It's a challenge. So you guys are starting to. What's the next step, do you think, for you? Is there any plan about how to move in the future in regards to helping your music ministry grow?
Well, either we've been talking about maybe doing another faith study. There's a series, as Eric can tell you, that kind of steps up from the basics to a little bit more not complicated, but mature faith subject matter, if you will. And the other thing that we've talked about and tossed around is having someone come in to do kind of a mass teaching, like just to teach us about the mass, so that we know in more detail and more intimately what we're doing here. Because I don't think most of us have had anything like that beyond,
Again, we make a lot of assumptions. We're there every week, so we must know.
Exactly.
But not really. I remember sitting in hockey one time beside a friend, and we're getting dressed. And he says, "You're Catholic, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." And he asked me some question. This was years ago. I said, "I don't know." He says, "Isn't it crazy? We grow up in the church. We go every Sunday. And we don't know the answers to the simplest questions our non-Catholic friends ask us." And I know. I said, "Yeah, it's embarrassing." I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. It's our fault maybe for not learning and listening. But, we take so many things for granted. And I think in our culture today that, I think we need to inject meaning back into the different parts of who we are. And who we are is way bigger than simply the liturgy. Liturgy is so beautiful and so important, but it doesn't exhaust what it means to be Catholic. And in so many churches, it does. Because it's exhausting if you're in leadership to put on a liturgy every week. It's exhausting. And so a lot of people don't have the energy, the emotional resources to see beyond that. And if we don't, it really diminishes our experience on the weekend. How many people in the band are in connect groups?
I think on paper all of them are, but I don't know that their schedules permit them to go every week.
Sure. And that's one of the nice things about connect groups is that you can come and go.
But about half of us, 5 out of 10, are in the same connect group, so we're kind of stacked on that one.
The music ministry is probably really good in that one.
That's why they go in over there. Although one of your band members is the connect group leader with us, and he leads the music a lot, Rob. So we get great music thanks to the music ministry too. So.
We're not shy on that. But look, you're in a leadership role at St. Benedict, and so anyone who's in a leadership role at St. Benedict has the responsibility to raise up others. And so I'm just curious, in terms of when you look at, and this might be more, I don't know if you've had to face this yet in terms of your own challenges since you've taken on the role, but I think it'd be helpful for people who are listening. When you think about who you need to raise up in music ministry, what are some of the key things you're looking for?
It's a very good question.
I knew he was going to say that.
I've been saying that a lot. These are all great questions. But it's something that we've been, we're aware that we need to work on. We just haven't quite gotten to the point where we're actively digging into it. Well, we did dig into it.
You have at times, though.
We have. And then so the people that we raised up had a baby, and so their
So
their involvement has to kind of.
I know somebody else having a baby soon. Your wife is pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how that looks too. Yeah, we'll
might be pulling Eric back into the music ministry. He's no stranger to that ministry.
Yeah, but some of the key characteristics that we look for are, I mean, largely they're the same ones that we look for in any ministry. We want someone who is faithful, someone who is available, someone who is teachable, and kind of the one that distinguishes them from any other ministry is someone who's musically gifted, right? And what I've experienced in many churches is that often you'll have people who are very generous with their time, who are very available, the kindest people you'll ever meet, humble, but they have no musical giftedness whatsoever. And really, my opinion and my thought is that for music ministry to be effective, for it to reach people, it has to be good. Because certainly I get hung up on...
I think that's an opinion we can get behind.
I find it distracting if I'm at a mass or I'm at a service where the music is wanting. I find it difficult to get past that. And I mean, maybe that's just a me thing, but I think that's a fairly common experience.
No, it's fair. The hymns, homily, and hospitality, right? Truly, like those three things that Father James highlights in his book really are critical to just even having, to have a good experience. If any of those three are off, it's going to make a big impact on people's experience of what you do on the weekend. And we have an opportunity, don't we, to...
So where would you stand? And you can just give me your personal opinion. Where would you stand? Because I know some parishes around the world would look to hire musicians, whether they're Christian or not, whether they're faithful or not. Where would you personally stand on that idea?
That's a sticky one, because I've seen scenarios where someone involved in music ministry is non-believing or is absent. The faith is absent from their lives, and they're just kind of indifferent.
But they like music and they're there to
exactly, or they were hired to do it, or whatever the case is, and then they experience conversion through that. Right. So that's awesome. Right. You can't, so it's difficult to discount that, but at the same time, from a ministry standpoint, you can't give what you don't have, right? And so you can't lead people in worship if you're
not worshiping.
You're just exactly. Singing. So it is a difficult one. I would say that would almost be a case by case thing. I would always prefer to bring on someone who is faithful, but depending on the scenario, it might be okay to bring someone on who is...
Well, that's where we have to challenge the people in leadership. Like, what are we leading people to? Are we giving people tasks, or are we leading people to Christ?
Exactly.
And if we're leading people to Christ, it's okay to bring somebody on who's not there yet, but let's make them our project. Let's invest in them. Let's do what we can to bring them into an experience of Christ. Let's not just leave them there and just take from them their gifts of music and as if their soul doesn't matter, as if coming to Jesus Christ doesn't matter.
Exactly, and that would be one of the things that I would say would be one of the kind of conditions for bringing on someone who is not growing in their faith, or at least open to growing in their faith, is I would say whoever's overseeing them would have to invest in them in a spiritual way.
Yeah, because does what we believe matter? And if it doesn't, then who cares? Just perform, and let's just do church on the weekends and let God sort it out. But I think he invites us to play a much more active role in caring for people's souls. And that includes people in ministry if we're in leadership. Love it.
So Phil, I'm well known in this ministry for being able to play three chords, the same three chords that are in the song Wild Thing. So if ever you need me to step into something else, just know I will make myself available.
I don't know how liturgically appropriate that is, but we'll have to run that by Sarah.
Wild for Christ. Look, Phil, thanks so much for joining us today. For everyone who's been watching and joining us, Phil actually did a workshop at the Divine Renovation 2018 conference. I got to stand in there with him and his wife, and they did a phenomenal job talking through all sort of the nuts and bolts of the music ministry. So for members of the Divine Renovation Network and the Divine Renovation Association, that video will be up on our DRA website. And that's perhaps another reason that you might want to join the DRA. So if you're not yet a member of the Divine Renovation Association, feel encouraged to join at divinerenovation.net. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. God bless.